Hey guys, what's going on? Hermdo back with you. Wonderful nicotine. Anyways, is Gen Z the most rejected generation? We have some reports here, some articles to get into. This is from Business Insider. Every cohort believes it is drawn the shortest straw, as Will Smith, the Gen Xer, famously groused. Parents just don't understand, but as Gen Zers strain to establish themselves, they face a uniquely fraught tension between unprecedented technology-enabled opportunity, infinite possibilities, a click, swipe, or DM away, and the unprecedented scale of rejection from education to careers to romance. Never have young adults have had this much access to prospective yeses, and in turn, never before have young adults been told no so frequently. What does the experience of this new scale of rejection do to a young person's psyche and to Gen Z's collective state of mind, and how will it reverberate through the rest of society as Gen Z eventually takes the reins of power when the rejectees become the rejectors? In interviews with psychologists, therapists, and guidance counselors, career coaches, and more than a dozen Gen Zers, most of whom, like M, who was somebody they featured early in the article, somebody who they graduated from New York University and with a degree in sculpting, got rejected. They graduated into the pandemic, couldn't find a job, took a 9-month coding boot camp, couldn't find a job. That was back in 2022 when all the tech layoffs were going on. Now they're living with a relative making like $700 a month from contract work. They applied for 400 jobs. They got rejected from every one. So yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. The ascendant generation's worldview warping experience of mass generation and dating scene, college admissions, and the job market given the focus at stake is not the young adults' egos or a sense of entitlement, but our expectation of agency in an increasingly mediated world. Oh, it's fucked. It's fucked. It's fucked. We're fucking over the generation. A whole generation, not every single one. Now, some Gen Zers are projected to have more money. Overall, Gen Z is expected to be a more successful generation than millennials. I think even Gen Xers in about a decade. But as of right now, just going through life, you get a lot of people get pushed to the wayside. A lot of people just, they just can't enter into a workforce and start living an adult life. So it's just like with millennials, it was just kind of like we had a prolonged adolescence. A lot of us are just like man babies in our 30s, living with roommates and playing video games all day. And I hope the same thing doesn't happen to Gen Z, where they're all forced to like cohabitate, and they're obsessed with like nostalgia. They're obsessed with but they never really had a prime in their lives. Like you could say millennials' prime was probably like in the late 2000s to the early 2010s, like during the Obama era, where things were still ostensibly normal. But now, Gen Z never really had a normal moment. They can't really remember normalcy as it stands. Through the 60s, most Americans got married in their early 20s to partners they met through social circles. Today, they spend nearly a decade longer dating. The median age of first marriage is 31.1 for men and 29.2 for women. During that additional eon, they're also equipped with an arsenal of apps that can summon and terminate new prospects on a daily, if not hourly basis. If we tally up the literal sum of unreciprocated swipes, DMs, follows, and texts that create today's ambient mode of romantic rejection, it wouldn't be a stretch to say a typical Zoomer on these apps is getting rejected and rejecting more prospective partners in a week than typical married boomer has in their entire life. The paradox of online dating has been thoroughly documented. Despite having more access to potential partners than ever, young people have invented vocabularies to describe the endless purgatorial disappointments of ghosting, situationships, breadcrumbing, and the hellscape of the apps themselves. Last year, Hinge surveyed 15,000 people with their dating views. 90% of Gen Z respondents said they wanted to find love, and 44% said they had little to no dating experience. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. But so many guys don't even go out there and shoot their shot because they're just like so worried about rejection. And look, I'm no stranger to rejection. I've been rejected plenty of times. It weighs on your ego. It makes you feel like shit. It makes you feel like you're not worth anything. You see so many people. I remember going to parties with all my friends, and they all had girlfriends. They're all paired up, and I was the only single one. I was like the 10th wheel. I just couldn't. For whatever reason, that was something I struggled with mightily, and eventually it just got to a point, I'm just like, fuck it. Might as well just live the incel life, just like, screw it. Judge me if you want to judge me, but I sympathize with these guys. After a while, you're just like, screw it. You talk to some of these guys, just like, I'm not interested in that shit anymore. I'm in my 30s. I've never really had a long-term relationship. A lot of guys are just like, screw it. I'll just be single for the rest of my life. Forget marriage. I know a lot of people in my life, getting married, having kids. Me, I'm so far away from marriage. I haven't dated a girl since the pandemic. Honestly, it's affecting millennials too. I know it makes you sound like a loser, but bro, I just don't care anymore. It's just like, whatever. Some guys are just meant to be alone. I'm one of those guys. I made peace with it, and I'm afraid a lot of these Gen Z guys just can't for whatever reason. It's just rejection is very bad. But this is from BuzzFeed, talking about Gen Z dating, talking about 21 concerning things about Gen Z dating. Honestly, coming from a high school sophomore, Gen Z isn't better or worse than any other generation when it comes to dating. We're just growing and changing the world and figuring it out as we go. You all did too. So there's some positive stuff in here too, but there's a couple things like there's no intimacy. Everything is online and everything is done for a post. Like, yeah, you live online in a certain degree. Like, privacy is out the window. You're recording yourself more than ever. I remember a time before smartphones. Gen Z largely doesn't. Smartphones came out, 18 years ago, 2007 with the iPhone. So a lot of them were still like young kids. They can't really remember a time before, I remember a time before the internet. I didn't get the internet in my house until I was 11 years old. We got it in 1997. It was crazy. It was like this shitty 56K connection, but it's so different now because they're just like, I can't relate to them. I just don't know what to say. I feel bad for them. I honestly do, but in some ways, I just don't know. But some people are saying that Gen Z dating is healthy. I don't know, where people are getting this from, but I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I'm sure some Gen Zs can find happiness and stuff, but at the same time, a lot of people are getting rejected. I also question the dating habits of people my age. There's too much ambiguity. With the talking stage, nobody is romantic anymore. For me, it's the amount of open relationships. There's a lack of monogamy, and open relationships seem to be the increasing norm. Now you hear that kind of stuff all the time. That wasn't really too common when I was dating. You were usually monogamous, but now it's like everybody's got 2 or 3 boyfriends, a bunch of guys they're talking to. Essentially, like, Gen Z guys are competing with like a whole host of other guys in this girl's contact list. It's messed up. It's messed up. It's just you're just competing with so many people. It's just really a nightmare. Gen Z has normalized mutual risk aversion, says Jeff Gunther, a licensed therapist who counsels millions of lovelorn Gen Z TikTok users as therapy. Jeff, it's a funny situation where it's okay to not get back to people. Sometimes it's empowering, but then there's a negative effect of those little mini rejections that eventually cut so deep that somebody might not decide to be vulnerable. No wonder that breakup coach who talk in therapy, speak, and dating influencers they can definitely discern green flags versus red flags that proliferated, each of them promising to demystify the romantic ambiguity of Gen Z. Yeah, this kind of goes on like this. Barry Schwartz, psychologist, famously observed the relationship between consumer choice and satisfaction in a 2004 book, The Paradox of Choice, distinguishes 2 types of people. The maximizers want the absolute best option, the much happier satisficers who go with the good enough option. Today's perceived infinite choice standards seem to have given rise to legions of maximizers among Gen Z. Per Schwartz's central argument, the overabundance of choices leads to the more disappointment. This does not seem to bode well for the general well-being. But what happens when one's choices are printed, limited, perhaps relentlessly via rejection? It's possible there's a kind of resilience that people develop when you're applying for 50 schools, but it doesn't hurt anymore to get rejected by 47, Schwartzman tells me. But much like Buchwald says of rejected romantics, he sees that whatever rejection among rejected applicants is very self-protective response. If you maximize the significance beforehand, when the pain of failure was less consequential, Schwartz says, kind of drives me crazy people doing, especially the reflection of their effort to protect themselves rather than just their cynicism about living in modern society. Yeah, with rejection, I know what it's like to get rejected by jobs. I know what it's like to be laid off for long periods of times, put out dozens, if not hundreds, of applications, resumes. You're sending it to literally everybody. You're talking to recruiters. You're linking up with people on LinkedIn. Good luck with that shit. But it's just like you get numb to it after a while, and you just stop giving a shit. Yeah, just some people talking about the rejection generation, how Gen Z is navigating a world of constant no. Rejected from a job because of my outfit. Get rejected from a job after they made you spend time on multiple interviews and assessment tests. Rejection in dating. This girl got rejected from a dream job after 3 rounds of interviews. I'm trying to smile through the pain, but dear God, what if I'm not just meant for anything? Dating apps the term rejection of a casual everyday experience. You might get rejected by more potential partners in a week. Everyone has in their entire life. With the rate we're swimming through people, Hinge's Gen Z date report shows that 90% of Gen Zers want to find love. 6% are held back by fear of rejection. Fear is just about the apps, about culture of cringe, the ease of detachment. Yeah, it's all about public perception too. You don't want to be perceived as cringe. We're open. They're a very open, honest generation in a way. I mean, they're they're very willing to like showcase themselves online. There's a lot of Gen Z YouTubers and content creators, stuff like that. But you got to be very careful with public image, because you put the wrong thing out there, like I often do. People have all sorts of weird notions about you, and you want to like make sure that you, with the image of yourself you're putting out there, you want to make sure people respect you and understand you. But some people struggle with that kind of stuff. Just interestingly, Gen Z is also 39% more than likely than millennials consider themselves romantically idealistic despite their high rejection rates. This low-key Delulu paradox highlights the complexity of our generation's approach to love and relationships and how my brain hurts. Jeez. Jobs and every end the application cycle in the job market. Gen Z faces a similar deluge of rejection with platforms like LinkedIn and Seek applying hundreds of jobs and comment only met with silence or generic no. The average job opening receives over 240 applications according to data shared with Business Insider, making a numbers game or success often feels like luck rather than merit. And boy, is that real. Before getting a job, I was rejected from 43 jobs in the span of 3 months. Friends share their own job rejection horror stories, like a job rejected me after everything but the contract was all signed, or another one who was laid off for silly reasons like yawning and sighing. In a small poll I conducted on Instagram, 69% of respondents said that job rejection hurt the most, followed by 27% who said romantic rejection hurts the most, and 5% cited universally related rejection. It shows how deeply job rejection affects us. It's no surprise, really, as Gen Zs have grown up witnessing constant financial insecurity from watching our parents go through the 2007 great financial crisis to mass job losses during the pandemic, and now we're trying to survive a cost of living crisis at the start of our careers. So yeah, this is messed up. And I got a few TikToks here.
Gen Z men no longer actively even trying to date. They're not even trying. And so the question is, well, why is that happening for women? Women, first off, are dating older. They want more economically and emotionally viable men, and that usually means older men. In addition, when young women are lonely, they have much better social networks. They have much stronger friend networks, whereas guys become kind of lone wolves and kind of literally sequester from everyone and everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. A lot of guys just can't, deal with this kind of stuff. But here we go, Gen Z. This is some culture war bullshit.
Gen Z men saying fuck off to feminism. Yesterday, BBC News shared an article that showed the widening gap between...
The gap between, like, Gen Z men and Gen Z women, like, politically is widening. Gen Z men are flying to the left. Flying to the right. Gen Z women are flying to the left. It's crazy. Like, the political divide in this country among these groups is really quite stark and quite, amazing. But, after a while, now that, the wokeness and DEI and all this like social justice kind of stuff, now that that's kind of being dialed back and Trump is dismantling a lot of these departments and whatnot, a lot of people feel more free to express their dissatisfaction with this kind of thing. And a lot of people are still clinging to it. And it's a difference between men and women too. Women still believe a lot of these progressive left-wing ideologies and whatnot. Men are largely rejecting it.
Gen Z men and Gen Z women, with a particular trend showing that Gen Z women are becoming more progressive and Gen Z men are becoming more conservative. Now, this is nothing new. It was shown that this was happening in America before, and it's happening across the West. And for me, it's incredibly fucking obvious why this is happening. Because feminism and the left in the present day do absolutely nothing to support men. They do the opposite. They demonize, they stigmatize, and they ignore their problems.
At some point, it's like, I know they've been talking about this for a fucking decade. I remember them talking about when when third wave or fourth wave, whatever wave it was, feminism came around in 2014, 2015 with Nina Sarkeesian, the war on video games, Gamergate, all that shit, all this kind of stuff. It's just like contending with the fact that, a lot of modern feminism seems to like demonize men. It's just like at some point, men have to just kind of adjust themselves. They have to kind of cope with, the way the world is changing. They have to, I think a lot of this like traditional masculinity kind of stuff, while there might be a place for it somewhere, I think a lot of it needs to be rethought. Men have to be more sensitive and more understanding of this kind of stuff. They have to, it's a world where, you have to share it with a lot more people. A lot more things are demanded, but it's just like I said before, with this pushback against woke, like leftist ideology, a lot of guys feel more empowered to like voice their opinions on this kind of stuff. So, but here's one.
Gen Z grads are not into tech. Tech has lost Gen Z. Why might that be? Gen Z is the generation that grew up in the community of tech. They saw companies rapidly scale.
Well, because all the fucking tech jobs are disappearing. Everyone's getting laid off.
They'll innovate, introduce new products, basically transform their day-to-day lives. They've also more recently seen layoffs, hiring freezes, and a very different culture than the laid-back and collaborative culture touted in Silicon Valley. It's no wonder the allure and attraction has faded. This new generation doesn't want to be bothered with questionable practices and ongoing layoffs. They're prioritizing consistency. Gen Z is rejecting tech. Can we blame them?
Okay. Interesting stuff. But here's something. Quiet quitting is out. Now Gen Z is revenge quitting. Long gone are the days of sucking up in the workplace. Workers are tired of being overworked and underpaid, and they're no longer staying silent about it. In today's economy, it's common for many people to spend years getting a college degree, putting themselves in incredible amounts of debt, only to secure a stable career that barely pays the bills or allows for any sort of work-life balance. The American dream. According to the Society of Human Resources Management, as the name suggests, revenge quitting is motivated by a desire to seek revenge. Employees quit intentionally to push back against toxic workplaces, limited career opportunities, career stagnation, unsupported bosses, and unreasonable expectations. SHRM also noted that this popular trend for 2025 is workers are over unfair treatment and poor wages. This shit, back when I was still, I'm working now, but, back when I was first entering the workforce around like the 2000s, 2010s, when I was getting my, bouncing around from job to job, but, it's a couple places I stayed at for a few years, tried to form a career and stuff like that, but it's just like, you just didn't do this kind of shit. You just didn't quit your job just to screw your employee over, unless there was like some serious like conflicts of interest or some serious like personality conflicts or whatnot, You just didn't do this kind of shit, in my generation, 15, 20 years ago when, when millennials were entering the workforce, we still had a lot of traditional notions that the boomers instilled in us about how to behave at work, and this wasn't it. Honestly, I fully support this trend. The company refused to provide the employees with healthy working conditions and proper work-life balance, livable wages, and they don't deserve said employees to begin with. Are we entering a stage where people are just like, fuck it, we're just not going to work anymore? We're just getting, like, this is from Ashley Ember's good YouTube channel. I'm going to go give her a subscribe, but she has good YouTube videos. You should check her out, but this is a little compilation she put together of some of Gen Z in the workforce.
This year, for the first time, members of Generation Z, those born after 1997, are expected to outnumber baby boomers in the workforce.
When asked to come in for an 8 a.m. meeting, my Gen Z new hire said, "Ugh, sorry, I can't make it. I have a workout class. Should this be allowed?"
My visceral reaction was, are you kidding me?
I'm literally 6 months into my first corporate job and I already want to quit.
I woke up this morning and I was like, you know what today is? Today is the perfect day to go over the bare minimum Monday routine.
You say right now you just won't hire Gen Z employees.
No, we don't. It's been a nightmare with 95% of
it's just like, it's getting to a point, honestly, and, it's kind of gratifying to see in some ways. Now, I wish nothing but the best for Gen Z, but at some point it's just like, there's no like leeway with like employers these days, very few people will be willing to work with you. It's like you're expected to be there at a certain time, and work a certain amount of hours. And Gen Z just says, fuck you. If you're not providing me with basic amenities, if you're not providing me with a healthy, productive workplace and competitive pay, fuck you, And hopefully, I don't know who's going to break first, Gen Z, who are desperate to find a job, or these employers who are just desperate to hire people. Are they going to have to go halfway, start offering better wages and better workplace environments? Or is Gen Z going to have to compromise? Somebody's going to have to compromise. I don't know who, but this whole thing with Gen Z, just like, fuck you. You don't deserve my effort. It's kind of gratifying to see. It's kind of like, yeah, fucking A.
the ones that we have hired.
I have a very high standard of living and like a very low work ethic, and so I'm just like constantly caught in between like wanting to make money but also not wanting to do anything to actually make money.
What do you mean, what is my dream job? My dream is not to have a job.
Exactly. Imagine living, like being able to make money or having like enough passive income or whatever, having a side hustle or something like that, having some kind of turnkey operation where you don't need to go into an office. You don't need to clock into a job. That's, that's a dream for me, but it's out of reach for me for the most part, unless this YouTube channel takes off. Like and subscribe, by the way. But yeah, it's just, this generation just doesn't give a fuck about, the things previous generations did. And it's at the point now, it's just like, fuck, why work at all? You're not making, and I get comments. I made other videos about Gen Z, and people are just like, what's the point of working when all you're doing is just you're paying enough to cover bills and you have no money left for yourself. What's the point of this shit? And you talk to a lot of these financial guys, and they're just like, you know, if you're making a certain amount of money, you got to live a certain way. You got to live beneath your means. You got to, nothing fun. Don't spend money on anything fun. Don't buy video games. Don't, you know, order out food. Don't buy new clothes. Just live in like a small apartment and don't do anything. Don't go on vacation. Don't do anything. And Gen Z's like, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. Yeah. But let's get into this video a little bit.
The youngest generation entering the workforce is rejecting work culture as we know it and redefining success on their own terms. Because of this, Gen Z has gotten a lot of backlash, being labeled as lazy, unmotivated, and a burden on society. And it's gotten to the point where some employers are avoiding hiring Gen Z altogether. But is this really fair? It's not new for youth to struggle with motivation, so have the older generations just forgotten how lazy and unmotivated they were in their youth? Or are today's kids really just less willing to work? I myself feel very connected to this topic as I'm the age bordering on Gen Z, if you couldn't tell from my space buns. Being born in 1995 and therefore a zillennial, I can relate to Gen Z's rejection of corporate nonsense, but in contrast, the millennial in me still feels that girl boss pressure of the 2010s to pursue CEO status.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
So today we're going to deep dive into it and see if Gen Z's approach to life is delusional or if vibing their way into adulthood is actually going to be better for everyone in the end.
Yeah, it's just, ooh, baby, ooh, baby. Let's get into a little bit more of this.
I personally think that this decline in Gen Z's aspirations all started with their change in mindset of education.
You know, for me, I didn't give a fuck about college. I didn't give a shit. I remember I didn't take the SAT or the ACT. I didn't apply to college. I was just like, fuck it. I'll go to community college for a few years. I was actually dual enrolled in community college in high school my senior year. I wound up, you know, getting a degree, associate's degree in like vehicle design. I used it for a few years, and then like from 20, I mean, after I graduated probably around 2006, and for a while I couldn't find a job in the industry for like 6 years. I just bounced around from place to place, did this, did that. I was a custodian for a while. I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was like sweeping floors and shit with this degree. And then 2012, I got a job, an entry-level job. I was making $12 an hour, doing design work, doing CAD work. And I was in the industry for about 6-7 years. Then around 2018, 2019, I got laid off. I couldn't find another job. I sent out hundreds of resumes. This is before the pandemic. And it was an absolute fucking nightmare, man. And so I can kind of relate to what these Gen Z guys are going through these days, with as more of them entering the workforce, you know, but it doesn't get easier, man. It doesn't. That's one thing, you know, it doesn't get easier. You know, it really, unless you're really hyper-focused and really have an ear towards success and get a few good breaks. That's the thing. You just like, you got to get some breaks here and there every once in a while, you know. I'm going to wrap things up in a bit, but it's just like, you know, a lot of people, you see a lot of successful people, you know, making money, people bragging about their money and shit like that. I got some buddies, they're always bragging about the money they make. They're successful, and I'm glad they're successful. I'm glad they're able to break the cycle, because I know a lot of guys, most guys I know are struggling and struggling bad. But a few of my buddies, they're doing well. They got kids, they got nice houses, they got good careers. But a lot of those guys got good breaks, and they knew how to exploit them. And I'm sure, yeah, a lot of them earn their success, but in a lot of cases, people just get lucky, and some people just don't. Me, myself, I didn't get very lucky at all. That's why I'm making YouTube videos as a side hustle. Visit my CashApp link, by the way. But, you know, it's just one of those things. You know, you just have to contend with it. I don't know what to tell Gen Z, man. I wish I had better advice for you guys. I'm sorry this kind of thing is happening to you. It's fucked up. Just keep working for it. You know, in this age of uncertainty, we don't know what's going on. I'm talking all the time about how crazy things are getting with the economy, with Trump, with Elon Musk, all this uncertainty, all this insanity. Shit is going crazy, man. It's going crazy. And right now, you know, all these industries are getting laid off. I was watching this other video this guy was talking about, you know, you got a lot of Gen Z graduates getting into the fields. They have no experience, but a lot of these guys working in these tech companies, there's so many layoffs in these like specialized fields. There's all these guys, there's this huge pool of unemployed guys with tons of experience. And it's just like, imagine graduating college into that kind of field and having to compete with like literally like hundreds of thousands of other guys for like a limited pool of jobs. And that pool is shrinking day to day. And it's not any question why a lot of these guys just choose to be neats, just say, fuck it, live off disability, or just like leech off your parents for an indefinite period of time, or just work some bullshit job and cohabitate with like 5 other guys. I don't fucking know. But it's a bad part of our culture. It's fucking everything up. And I really do worry about the future for this generation. I really do. But that's all I got for you guys for right now. Like, comment, subscribe if you're Gen Z, struggling and having a hard time. Any generation of person's welcome to comment under the video. Of course, let me know your thoughts about this kind of stuff. Don't forget to, if you want to support the channel, you can visit my Cash App, like I said before, or you can consider becoming a member. All sorts of cool perks wait for you. You can have a custom emoji. You can have my ugly face next to your name. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Have a good rest of the day. Have a good weekend. It's Friday. Thank God one good thing is happening. But take it easy, and I'll talk to you guys later.